Hello and welcome to the California 10th Assembly District Candidates Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Marin County. I'm League member Judy Bensaka, and I'll be moderating today's forum. With us also is League member Allison Howard, who will be our timekeeper. The candidates with us today are running for a 2-year term in the 10th Assembly District, and they are Gregory Allen, Erin Carlstrom, Diane Conti, Veronica Jacobi, and Marc Levine, the incumbent. The candidates will make opening statements of 2 minutes each, and we'll begin with Greg Allen.
I'm Gregory Allen. I was born and raised here in Marin County. My father was a union plumber, so I kind of understood what the unions were all about. Spent a great deal of time with him at Camp Canocta and Clear Lake. My mom was a Republican, so kind of had some interesting battles during election time in our house, but I understood kind of the differences between the two parties. I went in the Air Force at a real early age, spent 10 years, spent tours in England and then Germany, and also did some work down in Central America after I volunteered to be on AC-130 gunship as part of the Special Operations Group in Herbertfield, Florida. So I think I'm uniquely qualified for this position. I understand what the needs are of the people here in this area. I think it's important that we find some, some relief from the taxes burdens that's going to be imposed upon them. I'm a firm believer that Prop 13 has been a critical force for helping homeowners and business owners in the state of California to be able to successfully understand what their commitments are going to be going forward. So I'm firmly behind that. I also want to ensure that the veterans of California are going to be treated fairly and hopefully be the type of organization or type of state that people want to come back to after they've served time in the military. So that's why I'm running for this race. I want to make sure that I fight the best fight possible and help the people of the state of California. Thank you.
Erin Carlstrom.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Erin Carlstrom. I'm running for the 10th Assembly District to be an advocate, to be a passionate advocate for the issues that matter to all of us here in the 10th Assembly District. I grew up here in California, the daughter of a nurse and a mechanic. As a public high school student, I was a swimmer and got the opportunity to attend Yale University, where I swam for 4 years on the varsity team while studying for my bachelor's in political science. After college, I graduated and came back to California and put myself through law school and became a business and estate planning attorney in Santa Rosa. In 2012, I was elected to the Santa Rosa City Council, where I have served as the vice mayor and now regular council member, advocating for issues like our education, our environment, access to health care, living wages, and of course the quality of life that we all hold dear. In the Assembly, I'll continue that passionate advocacy by fighting for issues that matter to all of us, like the quality of our public schools and our early childhood education, like access to health care for all by advancing a single-payer Medicare for all system. I'll advocate for our environment by banning fracking and by implementing the offshore oil extraction, and our fight for our local economy by attracting high-quality jobs that give people the opportunity to live where they work. I can't do it without your help. I'm so honored to have the support of California teachers, California nurses, and our local firefighters, and I ask for your support.
Diane Conti.
Hi, I'm Diane Conti, and I'm running because there's too much at stake in California to accept the status quo. We need bold action and a commitment to getting it right for everyone, not just those who can afford to make big campaign contributions. There's a lot to be done. I'll start with reinvesting in education, rolling back the fee increases at public colleges, protecting the environment, getting a full ban on fracking, and passing the oil extraction tax, getting affordable health care through single-payer Medicare for all, and adding back to the safety net so that we prevent costlier problems down the road. And we need to get the corruption out of Sacramento. No crimes, no bribes, no loopholes, and no secret money. We need to pass the Disclose Act and get public campaign financing. These are measures that people say would be wonderful to have, but maybe impossible to get. I don't agree. It just takes not giving up. In my 3 decades as a nonprofit CEO, I have worked on many issues that were thought to be impossible to get at the time, like getting people to stop smoking, passing smoke-free ordinances, or getting people to stop drinking and driving. As a 2-term trustee on the College of Marin Board, I've been able to resolve contentious issues and build support for the solutions. I have lived and worked in both Marin and Sonoma counties, and I will wholeheartedly represent all of the needs of this district. I have the track record to make this agenda a reality, and I ask for your vote.
Veronica Jacobi.
Hi, my name is Veronica Jacobi. My nickname's Ronnie. And I am really grateful for this opportunity from the League of Women Voters and the wonderful work they do. I want to make it clear that I have endorsed Diana Conti and I am not withdrawing from the race. There's many reasons why I'm not withdrawing. First of all, other than what's been said in the media, I do want the job, but since we don't have runoff voting yet, I want people to vote for Diana first. If we had instant runoff voting, I would want people to vote for me first and Diana second, but we don't have that, so I want people to vote for Diana Conti. And I see myself as, when I'm staying in the race and saying that and making that clear to people, I see that as leveling the playing field, because due to corporate money, big money interests, the American playing field is anything but level at this point in the assembly race. And the other reason I'm staying in the race is, one of the big reasons why I entered the race is climate change. Global warming, the instability of our climate. James Hansen says it very well. He said it would be immoral to leave our grandchildren with a climate system spiraling out of control. And of course, we're suffering too now. The people in New York City suffered a lot, the subway being flooded. I mean, that, it's obvious that we have problems. Now, we have problems and we need to solve them, but we can solve them. And I'm so thrilled that Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power, we're leading the way, but the speed and scale that we need to do for climate resiliency, climate adaptation, and climate solutions, we're not there yet. So I would love for Diana to be elected and do wonderful things for our climate. Thank you.
Marc Levine.
Hi, I'm Assemblymember Marc Levine. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Community Media Center of Marin for hosting this debate today. 2 years ago, voters in Marin elected me, despite being the underdog, to the State Assembly, because they were looking for a serious and substantive approach to issues facing our community and our state. I'm glad to say that since being elected, with the gratitude for voters for also passing Prop 30, that we have a balanced budget, that we're growing sustainably, and we're making sure that those dollars are going into our public schools. We're also addressing very serious long-term issues to creating a sustainable budget long-term, like the creation of a rainy day fund. But I'm also proud to have authored 6 bills signed into law by the governor and have addressed other issues critical and important to our community, like banning fracking, banning the use of single-use plastic bags, and advocating for our local community. There is much more work to be done, and that's why I'm running for re-election, and I would be grateful for your support.
Thank you. And now for the questions. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes for their answers, and the first to answer will be Erin. What do you hope to accomplish in the next 2 years if you are elected?
I'll begin with introducing single-payer health care. It has come before the governor on 3 separate occasions and has been vetoed in the past. In Sacramento right now, we do enjoy a 2/3 supermajority in the Democratic Party. We have the opportunity to override that veto. I'll begin there because under the Affordable Care Act, we have until 2017 to put forward a system that would offer equal to or better care than the Affordable Care Act currently does. And I believe in California, our voters and our residents are ready to embrace that system. In fact, we owe it to them to reintroduce it. The ability to have access to care without worrying about your insurance or your employment status is critical to having a free society. As a daughter of a nurse, I have seen firsthand how important it is for people to have access to care. That's why I'm supported by the California Nurses Association.
Marc?
So this year I had the opportunity to begin focusing on 2 areas that are critically important to the future of California. First, on making sure that online education is used effectively and efficiently for students across the state of California. Next year, I'm working on making sure that the 3 segments of higher education, UC, CSU, and our community college systems are investing in that technology effectively as well. I also focused on building electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the state of California. The governor also signed into law a bill that would provide a standard for the number of EV charging stations in new construction. Next year, what I'm working on is making sure that automakers are not receiving credits for zero-emission vehicles that they are then later taking off the road, therefore getting taxpayer dollars for something that they're actually not following through on. If we want to have the clean air that we need and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we need to make sure that as many EV charging stations are out there so that EV cars are something that people can actually buy and use and get around in the state of California. I'll also be continuing my work on fracking, which is incredibly important to protect our environment in the state of California.
Greg?
Thank you. I think it's important to, at this point, make the public very aware of the fact that there's an onslaught on the tax situation up in Sacramento. We've got a supermajority up there right now. They're doing everything in their power to ensure that the tax burden's increased on homeowners and business owners in the state. So it's going to be my objective to focus on repealing ACA number 8, which I believe has already been passed. Unfortunately, at the assembly level, I believe it was passed on a Saturday, if you look into that. I'm also the only candidate that's been endorsed by Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association because of the fact that I am focused on Prop 13 and its defense. I think it's critical that we also ensure that corporations have the umbrella of Prop 13 under their control as well, so that they can determine exactly what their tax base is going to be going forward. I don't think it's important for us, or I think it is important to not allow that to be taken apart or have split roll be part of the equation. So it's going to be my focus to ensure that that's going to be done first and foremost when I'm in Sacramento.
Diana?
Well, I mentioned my first priorities in my opening, but I will reiterate that. I'll start with rolling back the fee increases at community colleges, CSUs, and UCs, work for a full ban on fracking, getting the oil extraction tax passed, reintroducing single payer, so this time it can really get all the way through to the governor's office and get that signed, and then have a more realistic way to rebuild the rainy day fund, rebuild it a little bit more slowly so that we can add back to some of the essential services that were cut, that if we don't add to them will end up costing more money down the road.
Veronica?
First, ban fracking. Second, carbon tax, including the oil extraction tax. It could be a tax or fee, but we need to tax carbon pollution, and it's the right thing to do. Also, when we do that, we can share the benefits or give a dividend to all the voters, all the citizens, and also set aside a percentage for education and another percentage for the safety net. And with all these things, and definitely incentivizing green jobs, green building, green energy, which we're in good shape for here. So green strings attached works really well, incentivizing, and the fossil fuel industry has destroyed our future unless we change things, and they should pay. And I also believe in retroactive carbon taxing eventually. Thank you very much. Actually, I have 30 more seconds. I read the sign wrong. No, camera, come back. I'm not done. Sorry. I want to take every minute because climate change, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And in the Air Force, they train to hug the monster. They train to address the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that our future will be miserable, and there could be food scarcity. We already have drought. I am going to stop now. Thank you.
Greg will be the first to answer the next question. Drought has become a major issue for California. What does the state need to do in response to its dwindling water supply?
It's a critical issue, obviously, and as we have growing populations here in the state, in particular in Marin County and southern Sonoma County will probably be next, I think it's important for us to enhance our storage capabilities, and also I think it's important for us to maybe push forward or push backwards, the governor's plan for a 17 mile long tunnel plan to bring water from the Sierras down to the southern region, I guess. I think it's important for us to ensure that we do things that are going to be moderate to the environment, and we're going to take care of the people first and foremost. I think the other thing that's important is that people don't realize that ABAG has a big push here in Marin County in particular. They're building large, high-density projects. The first one that's going up right now is Wind Cup in Corte Madera, which is a 180-unit complex. It's going to be drastically putting a big burden, I guess, on the infrastructure. There's a $180 million infrastructure program that's going to be put forward for the Ross Valley Sanitation District. That's largely due to the fact that they're going to have impacting from the 180 units in Wind Cap, and then 900 units also in Larkspur Landing. So I think that's something we need to push backwards.
Diana.
I think that we have to really increase our efforts at conservation. We have to increase our ability to store water runoff. There are a lot of different proposals being floated at this time that I think need to be explored more thoroughly. I've heard ideas about raising the dam at Lake Mendocino as one way to increase storage. There are other bills, I think, that are pending about that would have to be examined more thoroughly. I think that we need to have a broader perspective on what we're doing with water throughout the state. We need groundwater studies in every county. Sonoma County has that. I believe Mendocino does as well. It's not to the same extent in Marin County. And we need to take a look at what's going to be realistic for the kind of water that's going to be available. We need to be careful not to have really short-term drought solutions like allowing treated wastewater to be used for livestock. That's dangerous because it's not taking into consideration the pharmaceuticals and the heavy metals that could go into the ground system, and it also can threaten the organic farming standards of those people who are relying on that for their livelihood.
Marc?
The Assembly has had a working group on water issues, and my contribution to that working group has been focused on conservation. That's probably our greatest ability to control the growth of use of water in the state of California. In particular, agriculture uses over 80% of the state's water resources. I was grateful when Governor Brown invited me to an MOU signing with the Prime Minister of Israel, where water conservation was a feature of that agreement. They've been one of the leaders in innovations in conservation, and California has a lot to learn, particularly with agriculture. In the North Bay, we're very fortunate to rely on a local watershed. Nonetheless, we have our limits, as can be seen in low rainfall years, and conservation can really be the key to have a sustainable future for our community.
Veronica.
I'm a co-founder of the Sonoma County Water Coalition, and they're doing wonderful things. I'm very proud of that. Conserving water is very, very important. No tunnels. Eventually, each groundwater basin should be self-sufficient because California, I believe, about 30% of our energy goes to hauling water around, and that's very wasteful of money. It's very wasteful of energy. It causes carbon pollution, and also water can get lost in transit. So when I was a council member at the city of Santa Rosa, we did wonderful programs like Cash for Grass, converting lawns to low water usage plants, and rainwater harvesting. We have an incentive program. We have a gray water reuse programs. The state regulations, many people from Sonoma County helped change the state regulations to make gray water reuse easier, like if in your washing machine you can reuse the water and water your trees and whatnot. So also everyone should pay for water, and it's very important that groundwater not be depleted, because when there's land subsidence, we diminish our storage capacity, which happened in LA, and and also again fracking, very damaging to water, and there's no way we should be doing that in this state or any place. Thank you.
Erin.
Thank you. I serve on the Water Advisory Committee, the Russian River Watershed Association, and the Regional Climate Protection Authority. So I have been digging in on our drought and our water situation for quite some time now. In Sonoma County and in Marin counties, communities have implemented voluntary water reduction strategies. Santa Rosa has called for a 20% reduction. Our ratepayers have responded overwhelmingly positively, and I want to thank everyone in this district for being so water wise. We do have a long way to go with our treatment and our understanding of the water resources that we do have. California is one of only 2 states that do not regulate our groundwater. Santa Rosa and Sonoma County did just go through an exhaustive study of our groundwater supply, and what we learned is that when we overdraw on our wells, on our groundwater, it does impact our creeks and our streams, causing fish kills and a reduction in supply to the communities that rely on that water supply. I want to encourage everyone to consider safe medicine and pharmaceutical disposals. One of the problems we're facing is that our water, as it runs off, is not able to be utilized in recycled ways because of those contaminants and those prescriptions that are finding their way into our waterways and disrupting the biodiversity of our ecology and our ecosystems. We need to ban fracking. It uses an absurd amount of water in a drought state. We also need to remember that drought increases your fire risk. So we all need to remember that the water we use today might be the water we need over the summer. So please check out my website, erincarlstrom.com, for more tips.
Okay, Diana will be the first to answer the next question. How will you address state public pension and retiree health care liabilities?
Well, this is a serious issue that we have to take seriously and figure out what we're going to have to do about it. I believe that this is a situation where we can find solutions by working collectively. And I think we can find these solutions through collective bargaining processes. We have to come up with specific solutions for how we're going to address the pension debt. There are certain measures that I think we have to take a look at, like making sure there's no spiking, making sure that there aren't gold-plated pensions at the higher level. I do believe we need to protect those lower pensions. People earn that, they're counting on that. I would not support taking that away from people who are relying on that for their retirement, but we need to do something going forward. I would explore creating a system where each pension system is required to develop a plan that they're held accountable to that says, all right, we've worked it out in our situation, here's how we're going to reduce it.
Okay. Greg.
Pension reform is critical. Obviously, we've got major issues with financial concerns here in the state of California, and Marin in particular. Obviously, they've had spiking issues where certain people have gone forward, and let's say, for example, they had $100,000 a year compensation plans, and then the last year of their employment, they spiked that up with the use of vacation plans and things like that increased it dramatically. I think we could use something that's very similar to what the military uses. We used 20% of our first year. If you serve 20 years in the military, you got 50% of your base pay. You got 75% of your base pay if you went 30 years. It's not an exact thing to put forward, but it's something that would additionally help the fund to assure that it's solvent and that the people are going to be paid, because ultimately, if the funds are not there, then people are not going to get paid anything. So it's critical for us to do things right now to ensure that there will be something to take care of them in their rainy days and their retirement. We don't want them falling through the cracks and then being taken care of by a Social Security plan that's probably going to be insolvent itself. So it's a critical issue. I also think it's important that we ensure that, sorry, thank you.
No, you still.
So again, I think it's important also to take care of the people at the lower levels. Obviously, if they have a commitment, I think it's important for us to ensure that we match up and we take care of them. A promise made should be a promise kept, and I don't think that we should change that on the people that are currently in these offices. But going forward, we got to be very smart about how we go and structure these retirement plans for those people. Thank you.
Veronica.
So public pensions and health care. Well, single payer hopefully will be in soon, and I will definitely work for that, and that could help solve the health care costs of retirees. But public pensions, when I was on the Santa Rosa City Council, I took a 10% pay cut, and it was largely symbolic, but I didn't feel comfortable asking for pay cuts without doing that first. And also, I've promised 50% of my assembly salary to strengthen the support net. But getting back to public pensions, when I was on the council, we put in a 2-tier system. I also was the first elected that I know of who suggested a cap of $100,000, and I also suggested it going downward for pensions. And the reason I picked $100,000 is that it's more than enough, and I do believe going down over time would make sense. But I don't want to pull the rug out from people and change things a lot from what they expected, but I do want to adjust the expectations to make them financially sound. It's not fair to anyone to have unsound financial things. And the wonderful thing about, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I love math and science, and math is very clear, you know, the budget needs to balance, and thank you.
Marc.
The question is how we can create a sustainable pension plan for the state of California and keep our promises to people who are really depending on their pensions for retirement security. To that end, I authored AB 1163, which would require financial expertise training for the board members of CalPERS, the largest retirement investment board in the world, which the Assembly unanimously passed in January. We also need to focus on CalSTRS, our teacher retirement fund, which every day grows a deficit of $22 million, totaling $4.5 billion per year. We need to invest more money in the CalSTRS fund. Assemblymember Bonta and Speaker Perez are authoring a bill which they've asked me to co-author to bring stakeholders together, teachers, our school districts, and the state, to figure out how we can create a formula that we can inject more money to invest into the CalSTRS fund to make sure that our teachers who retire have a secure pension. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be an author of that bill, and we need to do a whole lot more to make sure that these pension funds are sustainable into our future.
Erin.
Thank you. Over the last few years, the governor and the legislature have implemented 12 reasonable reforms to public employee pension formulas that need time to come into play to make the changes that we know will be sustainable. These include things like eliminating spiking, moving to a 3-year averaging for your retirement contribution, eliminating employer vacation from these payments. So in Santa Rosa, for example, we've seen an over 50% turnover in our fire department. All of these new employees are going to be subject to the new formula models. We simply need to let these reforms take their time to come into play. The drumbeat of public pension reform is a race to the bottom. The average public employee retirement benefit is just over $30,000 per year. They are not living high on the hog, and we need to stop demonizing them. I signed against the READ initiative that would have allowed municipalities to unilaterally modify the terms under which an employee was laboring. I found that offensive both as a council member and as an attorney in Santa Rosa, and this is something I'd like to see us implementing across the board. We're asking for increased employee contributions to the average cost of those retirement benefits. We've eliminated employer holidays, and we need to just recognize that just as public pension costs have gone up, the cost of living has also gone up for the people earning those salaries. So we need to ask ourselves whether we want to continue paying a wage that allows our people to live where they work. And that's why I'm supported by so many working families.
Marc will be the first to answer the next question. California still ranks near the bottom in K through 12 school funding. What must be done to improve funding for schools, especially those in low-income areas?
So we've just come out of the Great Recession where terrible cuts have been made to our school districts across California. Fortunately, when I was elected, voters also passed Prop 30, which injected the state budget with billions of dollars of new revenue. We've been able to focus growth in K-12 spending, as well as in our community colleges and higher ed, based on that investment by voters. And thank you for that. We've been able to put billions of dollars year over year, as well as investments in Common Core education, as well as paying back the wall of debt that we borrowed from our schools over those years. So it's going to take a little bit of time for our schools to recover from those drastic cuts during the Great Recession. But what we've learned is that over 80% of California students graduate from high school, one of the highest rates in the nation. And that's a good first step. We'd like to see that at 100%, but we need to continue the growth in our spending in education, which again, fortunately, voters saw the value in when they passed Prop 30. Thank you.
Veronica?
I am very interested in using a carbon tax and share and putting a percentage towards education. Greening campuses is a wonderful way to save money and set an example and to show our young people that we are focused on the future and making the future good for them. I'm a mechanical engineer. I specialize in energy conservation, and I helped Lawrence Berkeley Laboratories save 40% on their energy costs, also the Oakland Unified School District. And when we save money on energy costs, when we invest in education and use part of the funds to reduce energy costs, we're making a brighter future. So it's definitely a win-win-win all the way around. Taxing carbon will provide lots of new funds, and we can turn the tight purse strings around and open it up and make our education system the jewel it should be. California is a global leader. We hopefully will continue to be a more accelerated speed and scale solution to climate change, and we hopefully will have the best education. We will invest in our youth. The youth are our future, and that's why, as a mother, etc., the timer keeps cutting me off. Thanks.
Diana?
We have not done nearly enough for education in California. It's been slowly eroding, and it hasn't gotten better. Prop 30 was a good thing, but it's just stemmed the hemorrhaging. It has not added back what needs to be added back. There's a whole generation of kids who are having a very hard time getting higher education. At community college levels, the fees increased over just a course of a couple of years from $26 a unit to $46 a unit. That's very difficult for people who are working and trying to get their way through school. And it's going to mean they take fewer units. It's going to take them even harder. 80% of new jobs require a college degree. It's a serious problem at all levels of education. We need to really go back to the public and show them what's really needed for education so they're willing to reinvest in extending Prop 30. We're going to have to take a look at additional resources. The local funding formulas will help somewhat for low-income communities, but they're still kind of getting the kinks out of that. And we need to look at closing loopholes in Prop 13 and the oil extraction tax in order to get more resources into education.
Okay. Erin?
Thank you. I have several proposals that I am working to put forward. The first is to join the groundswell of reforming Proposition 13 by implementing a split roll approach that would require corporate property owners to be subject to regular reassessment so that they are paying their fair share into our tax coffers that fund our K-12 schools. I'm very hopeful that the offshore oil extraction fee, which is projected to generate more than $2 billion in revenue, will pass. That money is currently earmarked for health and human services, parks, and of course, our schools. As the mother of a young son, I am very interested in the investment, or rather the lack of investment we're making in the first 5 years of our children's lives. There are a couple of proposals, including Strong Start, Transitional Kindergarten, Universal Kindergarten, that I very much look forward to funding. We need to stop making public tax dollars available to private charter schools that are unregulated and frankly are basically invisible to the public eye. We need to invest in more programs like Santa Rosa's Restorative Justice Program, thank you, that takes disciplinary problems and keeps kids in school to deal with the ramifications of their actions rather than expelling or suspending them, which allows that school to keep collecting that daily attendance fee and creates a more well-rounded student that understands the consequences of their actions.
Greg.
Thank you. Along with my wife, Paul, I think the most important achievement that we've had in our lives is that our two children both graduated college. Our youngest, Gregory Jr., just graduated a year ago. So we know about the cost that it takes to put people through school. It's very difficult for the families to ensure that they're going to get their kids through. We've got problems in the universities that don't have classes available for these kids so they can get through in a timely manner. A four-year degree is very difficult to get in 4 years now, and it takes much longer than it should. I think we've also had legislation in Sacramento that's had misdirected focus on where the funds are going to. We've got, for an example, a $64 billion high-speed rail system that's projected to be in the center of California. Every time we talk about education, it seems that the funds are going elsewhere, and then we always try to hear about the fact that we're going to charge corporations more, or we're going to charge that or charge higher taxes to the homeowners. It's far too late for that. I think it's important for people to realize that every time that we raise taxes on corporations, they're not going to lose out on their funds. They're not going to lose out on their profits. They're going to pass that along to the consumers. So we need to really be realistic about this. We need to look at things that we need to stop right now. The high-speed rail is far too expensive for this time. We need to start putting those funds elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, Diana will be the first to answer the next question. What reforms, if any, do you support for modernizing the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA?
I think that CEQA needs to be preserved as it is. I think there may be some problems in the implementation at local levels. I think there may be some remedies to red tape and delays that can be handled at the local level. I think we need to talk about that. I think we need to make sure that small businesses are not inadvertently getting collateral damage to this, but I would not erode CEQA per se. It's a landmark legislation. It's what we need to protect the environment. It's something that needs to be preserved, but the way it gets implemented and some of the red tape things could be made better.
Marc?
I voted against CEQA reforms in the legislature last year. The CEQA reforms included an exemption for a basketball arena. It also created an exemption for measuring traffic. I felt that those things were inappropriate in a bill to do, and that I believed would erode what CEQA does present for so many policymakers who need important data to make decisions critical to our environment and our communities. But I would be supportive of changes that would end abuses of CEQA, which as a San Rafael City Council member I saw when the San Rafael Pacifics wanted to play baseball in our local baseball stadium, in our municipal stadium, and they used a CEQA lawsuit to try to hold that up. So there are spaces or room for reform, but I haven't seen those yet in the legislature, and I was very proud to be the only member of the local government committee that voted no, and to again vote no on the floor of the assembly last year.
Erin?
When I was on the Santa Rosa Planning Commission, I utilized CEQA review to make good projects better. Every year, reforms to CEQA are introduced in the legislature. Most recently, one of those reforms came forward that would change the way we look at the traffic impact section of that environmental review, changing it from how many cars are being introduced and moving along the roads to how many people are being moved. I think that's a very good reflection of California's shift from single occupancy vehicles to bicycle and pedestrian traffic, to acknowledging that people move around on buses and in cabs, and especially here in the 10th District, as we hope people will begin moving around on the SMART train. So modifications to CEQA like that acknowledge our changing understanding of the impacts of projects on our communities are very important. Changes that, however, that would dilute CEQA would not find a friend in me. I mentioned some of the work that I've done in the community, including the Regional Climate Protection Authority, where we are implementing our climate change adaptation plans. Just last week, the governor issued his executive order with respect to the drought, allowing some exemptions to CEQA, and I think that is a very short-sighted decision-making. In Santa Rosa and for our local communities, I would go a step further and advocate for community impact reports that take into account not just the environmental impacts that are coming forward from some of these big developments, but how are they changing the tone of the community?
Veronica?
CEQA is very important, and strengthening it, and especially strengthening everything to do with carbon pollution, climate change, and global warming. And yes, updates can be important. There may be some red tape reductions, but we need to be very, very careful. And I also support community impact reports and have supported them in the past on the Santa Rosa City Council. CEQA is one of our best tools. It's what helps keep California wonderful. And business interests that aren't that concerned with the future go after it over and over again. I want to also mention that with climate change, I want to empower individuals and communities and, of course, government. And my website, veronicajacobi.com, has information on that. It also has information on my endorsing of Diana Conti and my thoughts on that. And there's never enough time to explain thoughts on that in these forums. Also, my website, ourgreenchallenge.org, focuses on empowering individuals and communities and cities on climate change. I also, as a candidate, have a good jobs and climate plan for California to continue making us the great leaders that we are. Thank you.
Greg?
Well, I've spent the last couple of weeks attending a number of different city councils meetings here in the district, in Petaluma, San Anselmo, Ross, Belvedere, and it's come to my attention that there's a number of issues that people are pretty shocked to find that are far behind. I was at Mill Valley City Council meeting the other day and understood that they had some issues regarding traffic congestion, and they're just now implementing a system that's going to tie into affect their light system with Caltrans, and so that they can minimize the effect of traffic. They are also concerned about the fact that vehicles, when they're out idle or it's stopped, they're emitting a great deal of greenhouse gases. If that's the case, then we need to start looking at what these diamond lanes are doing to the traffic patterns as well. We got the multitude of people that are trapped in these other lanes waiting for the diamond lanes to open up at certain hours so they can commute at a quicker pace. If that's the case and we care about greenhouse gases, then we need to think about those automobiles that are stuck idling and stopped oftentimes and the impact that they're having, because we know we're going to try to do the best we can for the environment. We're trying to get people into buses and things like that, but the bus routes don't even connect half the time. So we've got to do some other things in order to be really effective. We've got to be realistic about that. So the reality is that there's going to be a number of automobiles that are going to be shifting over to battery and electric vehicles and things like that. But until that's done at a higher percentage, we need to take care of what's going on currently. I think Sacramento's done a very bad job of looking at this. I think it is important that we review traffic patterns and we find ways to utilize technology to limit the exposure and the time that people are spent stopped and doing nothing but sitting there idling. Thank you.
Okay. Marc will be the first to answer the next question. The governor has proposed a water export plan with large tunnels around the San Joaquin Delta. Do you support that plan?
I don't support the governor's plan. Right now we have a system that's flawed, and his plan creates new flaws and new losers and new winners, and it's not clear to me how it will be beneficial for the state of California. I think it is important to explain and understand that the tunnel plan that the governor has is separate and distinct from the water bond that was passed a number of years ago by the legislature that has not appeared on the ballot yet. It was an $11.5 pork-laden plan, $11.5 billion pork-laden plan that the legislature has shelved. But we may be working on a trimmer plan to really focus on conservation as well as environmental protections for our Delta ecosystem that are so important. We'll be working on that through the rest of the year. There are a number of water bond plans that are in the legislature right now, and hopefully we'll have a much slimmer plan that's focused on the environmental protections that we need. Again, that is separate and distinct from the governor's tunnel plan.
Veronica?
Yes, I don't support the water export plan. As I said earlier, I believe every groundwater basin should be self-sufficient at some point in time. Also, we should be planting our food in locations where there's water for it. Now, we may need to do some continued transport of water for a while. Water conservation, funding rainwater harvesting. Drought is a part of California's past, and it is a part of California's future. Until we really get climate solutions down, which is going to take some time because there's a lag between carbon pollution and the effects on our temperature, we're going to have more wildfires. And Arnold Schwarzenegger said it well, that we used to have a fire season and now it expands and pretty much all the time can be fire season. So we need to be very, very careful about protecting our water. We absolutely need to ban fracking. It's not just that it uses lots of water to do it, it puts chemicals in the water. And there's a film, Gasland, that shows people opening up their taps and having if there's a flame goes there, it just turns into like a blowtorch coming out of their faucet. So we don't want that in California. Yes. We're important. Thank you.
Greg?
I am also opposing the governor's plan for it. I made a mistake in my earlier statement, the open statement. It's a 45-mile-long tunnel plan, and this is a plan that Governor Brown put into place his first term in office back in the 70s. It didn't pass forward at that point, nor should it pass forward now. It's $17 billion in its current state. It needs to be stopped and rejected. That's obviously funds that we could use to enhance our education system, enhance the life quality of life of the people here in the state of California. Water export, I think people would also be surprised to find that there's a water pipe that comes across the Richmond Bridge from the East Bay into our district. Okay, there's a number of things that we need to do. If anybody took a drive out to the reservoirs during the highest part of the drought, they'd be really surprised to find how shallow these reservoirs are. They don't have much capacity at all. So when we have rainy years, we're letting a great percentage of that water just go right out into right downstream, and it's something that we could obviously use in years like we've had in this last year, and obviously we're going to have droughts going forward. So we need to be really smart about how we use the water that we have. I do think it's important that we capitalize on some of the technology things that we have in place right now, and we have these options and do what we can to make sure that water is number one priority, because without it, we don't have life here. So it's really important that we do all we can to enhance the people's lives here.
Diana?
I'm opposed to the peripheral tunnels, as is, I believe, everyone else here. It's a short-sighted solution that is basically robbing Peter to pay Paul at the expense of the environment, at the expense of areas that are going to get their water diverted. It can be very dangerous for fisheries and all of the delta ecosystem. It is costly. The money isn't there. The money should go to other places, other priorities within the legislature, and it's a short-sighted solution that should be opposed.
Erin?
Yes, I'll round it out. Number 5 in opposition. The delta tunnels, the peripheral tunnels as they are currently envisioned, are reminiscent of Governor Brown's first crack at the gubernatorial bat. It's a very interesting conversation to have about sharing water between communities. As we know, many communities in northern Marin receive water from Sonoma County, from Lake Sonoma, and many communities in Sonoma County receive water from Mendocino and Lake Mendocino. So there are responsible ways to share water across communities, especially communities of interest that work together towards conservation and management of those water resources. These delta tunnels are going to grossly negatively impact those delta communities and the ecosystems that depend upon them. And unfortunately, it's going to lead to a continued dependence on water in an area that wouldn't naturally have received it in the first place. There are huge agribusiness interests at play here, propagating this need for water in the Central Valley. So no, I do not support the peripheral tunnel plan. I will say that the water bonds do have some elements that I do support. I serve on the Water Bond Coalition, and some of that money would be targeted towards support of efforts like our resource conservation districts that work on innovative solutions to water needs for agricultural and commercial users. Some of that money would also go towards those integrated regional water management plans that I referenced earlier, helping communities plan together for their future water needs.
Okay. Greg will be the first to answer the next question. The legislature has been returning formerly state-run programs to the local level, and local officials are worrying about the cost. What can it do? What can the legislature do to ensure that sufficient funding is also provided to support those programs locally?
Thank you. I think it's really important that we start to put the power back to the people, down at the state, and the state level is one thing, but put it down to the towns and the communities where people live. These things need to be dealt with down at their levels. There are unique problems that they face. Obviously, the time I spent in the last couple of weeks going to the city council meetings is maybe aware of the fact that there's issues that are not being addressed, and they're obviously not being talked about as well. We've got a media that's going to try to close off exactly what's happening in these areas. So I think it's important that the state, first of all, understands what their role is and to try to help these communities to be effective. We got, for an example, in San Anselmo, there's a $17 million flood control program that's slated for development there. That's a program that's going to put about 5,000 to 7,000 truckloads of material out of San Anselmo. They don't even know where they're going to put this. Part of the problem is that 50% of those funds are supposed to be coming from the state of California. Another 30% is going to be coming from the county of Marin, and the remaining 20% from those areas and those towns that are there in the Ross Valley. So again, this is another example of what Sacramento is going to be doing to try to tell the counties and tell the cities that they need to act now while the dollars are there, and we all know that they're not. California, unlike the federal government, does not have a printing press where they can make this money. So it's important for us to understand that. We don't need to be putting additional responsibilities on the taxpayers. I think it's important that we help them to try to do things that are going to help life, not to impose things just because the money's available right now. And without it, obviously that was another thing that was told that St. Anselmo, if they don't do this plan right now, state funds are going to go away. That is something that needs to stop.
Marc.
I'm a staunch advocate on behalf of our local communities, and I've been supportive of creating new infrastructure resource districts for our local cities, as well as identifying money from the Air Resources Board for implementing greenhouse gas emission plans for our local cities. I've also been an advocate for the city of Novato when the Comptroller's Office tried to take back $6 million that they said was owed to the state, as well as when the Department of Finance tried to get a hold of that money. Fortunately, we were able to save that money for the city of Novato, but we need to make sure in the end that the state stops taking money away from our local communities and our local school districts and actually enables and empowers our local communities to do the right thing, as well as allow those resources to be used locally. I was grateful with the reforms to our education system to see the local control funding formula, which really breaks school districts out from having categorical funds dictate how they spend local dollars and be able to use those funds as they see fit to serve their students in their local community.
Erin.
Thank you. We are living this every day in Santa Rosa and in communities across this district. City decision makers' hands have been tied as our revenue sources have dried up with the loss of redevelopment and the continued stranglehold on property taxes, that is Prop 13. But the expectations of our constituents for the provision of services has not gone down, nor should it. We have an obligation to begin meeting those responsibilities. So at the state level, what I would be looking to do is implement some of those reforms I've previously referenced, loosening Prop 13, looking at our 3 strikes and mandatory minimum sentencing laws. That's going to remove people off of the state tax rolls and hopefully loosen up money coming to the local municipalities. Some programs, I think, are better distributed at the local level. Through AB 109, we have many state prisoners returning to the counties and communities where they were from. And while that has, of course, been a huge impact to our public safety communities and to the community at large, because the funding that was provided for that realignment has not met the needs, we do know that for the long-term health of those folks returning to home, that is going to improve it's going to lower their rate of recidivism. Health and Human Services is another area that I believe can best be provided locally. And as a city council member, I'm very in tune with the impact of the decisions being made in Sacramento right now. I will continue to take that with me.
Diana.
This is a problem. This has showed up as a problem for cities with quite a while. They've been stuck with a lot of unfunded mandates, and it's been very difficult for them, and it was made worse after 2008 in the mad dash scramble to figure out how to balance the state budget. I think there's been a lot more damage to cities recently, and it's an example of kind of the right hand not paying attention to what the left hand is doing, and there's been too much happening in the state legislature with kicking the can down the road to the local level. I think there are some things that could really improve coordination, but there has to be an overview that's worked out in partnerships between the state and the cities to figure out what services are best handled at the local level and what services are best handled at the state level, not kind of knee-jerk reactions that leave the lowest person on the totem pole holding the bag for that. There's a lot that has to be improved in terms of how those service delivery systems work and that partnership between the cities and the state. It shouldn't be the state just handing down mandates and leaving the cities holding the bag. I think there's a lot of reforms that we could work together to get passed.
Veronica.
Yes, it's very tough when responsibilities are handed down without funds attached to them. I totally believe in empowering local government. I think decisions locally are a great thing, and programs locally are a great thing because we can get into the details, and details are really important. I would, again, have carbon taxing to create those funds so that the responsibilities come with funds attached. I would guarantee some of those funds to every area, of course, but I would also have bonus funds that are green strings attached for special programs that address climate change, because that's what's going to keep our future, going to turn it bright instead of the sad path we're going on now. And I know it's not fun to talk about climate change and suffering and droughts and wildfires, but they're real. So we need to face it and act accordingly. And I'd also would create funding, extra bonus funding, where we're not asking local municipalities to reinvent the wheel. We're, giving them, you can do this, this, and this. So definitely creating that funding and creating solutions. Thank you.
And that concludes the questions. Before the candidates make their closing statements, I want to give you some important dates. Election Day is Tuesday, June 3rd. The last day to register to vote or re-register if you've moved since you last voted is May 19th, 2 weeks before the election. Requests for absentee ballots must be received by the Elections Department by May 27th, 1 week before the election. Early voting will open at the Civic Center, room 121 on May 6th. If you go to the leaguesmartvoter.org website and enter your street address and zip code, you'll be able to see your own ballot, with links to candidates, issues, ballot measures, and information about the voting process itself. In addition, our website, marinlwv.org, has many other online resources for voters to research facts and campaign financial information. And now the candidates will make closing statements of 1.5 minutes each. Reversing our order of opening statements, we'll begin with Marc Levine.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks to the League and to CMCM and the other candidates for joining me today. When I was elected 2 years ago, I was elected with a bumper crop of 42 freshman members of the Assembly out of 80. We've been elected this past cycle with a renewed patience and seriousness to making sure that the substance of policies are right. We're looking to make sure that the intended outcomes are the outcomes that we're looking for, as well as that the unintended consequences are avoided. This has been an amazingly positive experience representing Marin in the legislature. I'm very proud of the 6 bills that I've authored that have been signed into law. Very proud that just in the past week, 13 of my bills have advanced to the policy committee and 2 of my bills advanced off of the floor of the Assembly. I look forward to continuing to do this work to make sure that the year that we've seen where we've been able to accomplish things that hadn't been able to be accomplished before, raising the minimum wage, making sure that we can balance the budget, reinvesting in our schools, protecting our environment, are all things that we can continue to do into the future, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Veronica, Jacobi.
Well, I want to strongly encourage you to vote for Diane Conti. If for some reason you absolutely won't, then I would love your vote, but I would love it more if you voted for her, to level the playing field and get a strong progressive elected to the Assembly. I want to talk one more time about climate change. And global warming and climate change can feel very frightening and overwhelming. How can we add that to our to-do list when there's so many things we're already dealing with? But we can change. And ourgreenchallenge.org has wonderful tips on it to empower you and empower your community. And we can take small, well-planned actions, and we can also experiment. I've lowered my footprint a lot over the years by experimenting, and that takes the sting out of it. And thank you very much for your time and attention, and please use your vote. And thank you so much.
Diane Conti.
This campaign feels to me like a really, really long job interview with a whole lot of people. And in essence, I do think that's how the electorate is set up. Every 2 years for the State Assembly, voters get to decide who the best person for the job is. And my commitment throughout this campaign is to let you know what I would do in order to serve you. I will draw on 3 decades of experience running community-based nonprofits and as a trustee of the College of Marin, and someone who really knows how to make reforms that show up in people's lives, that make a real difference. I know how to build the support for bills and legislation and changes that need to be made, and I know how to work with the public in terms of that. Pretty much what you see is what you get with me. I will always vote. I will never duck a vote. If I don't agree with a constituency, they will know why. I'm a good problem solver and a community consensus builder, and I'm absolutely committed to making changes that will really show up for people. And if you'd like more information, my website is contiforassembly2014.com. Thank you very much.
Erin Carlstrom.
You've heard a lot of information during this forum, and I hope what you've heard from my answers and my commentary is my track record on the issues that matter to this district. My track record of legislating and advocating on funding for our schools, on access to health care, and in protecting our environment. These are the values that I'll take with me to Sacramento. Something else that I'll take with me to Sacramento is my advocacy, my passion, and my enthusiasm for the people of this district. This district deserves to have a champion. I'm very hopeful to be your champion in Sacramento. I stand up for working families in this district. That's why I'm supported by nurses, teachers, and firefighters. On June 3rd, I humbly ask for your support. And you can check out my website at erincarlstrom.com. That's Erin with an E. Thank you very much.
Greg Allen.
Thank you. When you send me to Sacramento, I'm going to fight for the taxpayers of California. Currently, we pay the highest property taxes in the country. Proposition 13, when it passed in 1978, stopped the out-of-control assessment that were taking place. Prior to its passing, localities could increase taxes anywhere from 50 to 100% based on the properties in their area that were sold. If anybody thinks that rents are going to be maintained or lowered when Prop 13 is taken apart, they're mistaken. It's important that we maintain Prop 13 like it is. We maintain corporations under it as well, because again, taxes are going to go up on everybody, and we're ultimately going to be paying the bill. So everybody needs to understand what's at stake here. The legislature is currently trying to take apart Proposition 13. The 2/3 required now to increase taxes, trying to be lower to 55%. That's critical. We need to maintain it like it is. It's done a very good thing. We need to also talk about what education dollars and other things and where it's being spent, and stop piling on the backs of the homeowners. I mean, the reality is that these big plans for a tunnel and for a high-speed rail system down the middle of the state, when we're dealing with water issues and other problems, it doesn't need to be thrown on the backs of the taxpayers. When you send me to Sacramento, I'm going to fight diligently to ensure that we're going to maintain lower taxes, we're going to have quality of life, and we're going to stop the supermajority that's got us in the stranglehold right now. Thank you. I hope for your vote. My website is Gregory Allen, Assembly 2014. Thank you very much.
And that concludes our forum. Thanks to the candidates for running, to Allison for timekeeping, and to you, the audience, for watching.